What is going on, all you wonderful A-plusters out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again to give you guys another Superman and Lois review. This time, of course, we are going to be talking about episode number 5, but I'm also going to be giving my thoughts on the show of what I think of it so far at the very end of this review, because after this episode, we unfortunately do go into a hiatus before the CW switches the schedule, so it's going to be Supergirl every Tuesday instead of Superman every Tuesday. While I definitely am looking forward to seeing this final season of Supergirl, I am without a doubt going to miss Superman and Lois during those next few weeks while it is off the air. But hopefully, because of the show having such a big hiatus, it will hopefully mean no more delays once the show gets back. Hopefully, it'll just be episode after episode after episode, and it won't have to go on any more hiatuses. At least that is the hope. So my fingers are definitely crossed for that. But guys, let's definitely get right into this review, because we had, of course, once again, another really good episode. The episode starts with some narration from Clark Kent, kind of like we got in the very first episode. He talks about how he always has loved basically the fall when it comes to Smallville, especially during this festival that usually happens once a year, which I believe they called Harvest Fest or something like that. And it's essentially kind of a charity event, but it also has a really nice festival that goes along with it, so people can donate items that they no longer need, whether it be clothing or furniture, but also there's a fun fair that they get to go to immediately afterwards that night, and it's basically just kind of a fun celebration. Something I always really like about small towns. A lot of small towns do similar events just like this. We actually get a scene between Jordan and Sarah where it's implied that Sarah is kind of asking him out on a date. Of course, neither of them actually use the term date, just because they're both pretty socially awkward for the most part, but you can definitely tell like they have feelings for each other. But of course, you got Jonathan Kent the entire time kind of giving him crap, but in the playful kind of manner that siblings always do. But unfortunately for him, this scene is also followed up by him getting dumped by his girlfriend the day that he was supposed to see her again. Basically, she was supposed to be coming down to Smallville to meet up with him for Harvest Fest, but she just kind of decided that in the end it wasn't worth it, and rather than letting him know like during Harvest Fest, she just thought it'd be easier to break up with him over the phone. Which, I mean, yeah, it is definitely kind of harsh. Like, I get the whole like not being able to do long distance relationships. It's definitely a bit of a challenge. Like, I myself have never done it, but I've known people who are in long distance relationships, so it definitely makes sense that it wouldn't last. But at the same time, I totally see his frustration with her kind of just doing it over the phone, not even being willing to break up to him in person, something that I've personally never experienced, but once again, I definitely have known people that have experienced something like that, and I can definitely tell you it's definitely quite heartbreaking. Meanwhile, we cut back to Miss Powell, whose first name I completely forgot, but she was the woman from episode 3 whose son went missing. Well, it turns out he is no longer missing. He has appeared, but his story doesn't quite add up, as he claims that he was in a really bad accident and then suddenly got amnesia and only recently got his memories back. But of course, this doesn't exactly sit well with Lois or the main woman at the I believe I can't remember the name of the journalist place that they work for, or that they work at, because I guess technically they're the only two employees there. But the Smallville newspaper that they work at, it doesn't sit right with either of them, because if it was just a case of amnesia and that he actually didn't disappear in the middle of work, then why did Morgan Edge go through all the trouble of hiring a metahuman to try to kill her, and simply for looking into it? And on top of that, there's also that kind of whole case of amnesia not actually really working that way. You have this fictional idea that amnesia means that you can fully function, the only thing that goes missing is your memory, but there's very rarely a case where that kind of a thing actually happens. And even when it does happen, even when it's reported, there's still a lot of doubt behind the legitimacy of those reports. So it does make sense that they are very suspicious of this guy's story. But of course, the mom insist that the two of them stop looking into it and just appreciate the fact that he is now back. But of course, everything isn't as well as it seems, because we get a scene later where during the donation portion of the Harvest Fest, unfortunately, he is completely unable to control his powers, and he just lights the building on fire without being able to fully control his new Kryptonian type power. Something that was hinted at in the previous episode when Morgan Edge got a hold of Kryptonite X. Something I didn't realize what it was at the time when I was reviewing that, but basically Kryptonite X is a type of kryptonite that gives humans Kryptonian powers, but very temporarily. Kind of think of it like the Velocity X from the Flash TV series. So it's similar to that, except for instead of giving you access to the Speed Force, it gives you access to Kryptonian powers. What was also really cool about this episode is that we do see a lot of parallels between Clark Kent and Jonathan Kent, like both of them feeling very out of place in Smallville, like when Clark Kent was his age, or probably just a couple years older than what Jonathan Kent is currently in the show. He just didn't feel like Smallville was the place for him. He really wanted to find out the reason he was sent there, and he felt like Smallville was kind of an anchor on him. So we get a few flashbacks of him kind of being a masked vigilante, wearing all black and trying to help out where he can whenever it's petty theft, but he doesn't go too far with it, to my opinion. But of course, Smallville isn't really the place for that kind of a superhero, as petty crimes like this don't exactly happen as often. And plus, when it came to metahumans that we get later on in the show, Smallville isn't exactly the place where they'd be hanging out at. However, so this also does kind of confirm that while I know a lot of people like to see the show as a spiritual sequel to Smallville, like I kind of did when I started watching it, I always saw this as like kind of a spiritual sequel to both Smallville and the Dean Cain Superman and Lois TV series back in the 90s. This does confirm that a lot of events from Smallville did not really play out the way it did in the show in this universe. So more than likely, even though I know that the I believe the thing was called like the Wall of Oddities or something like that, basically the investigations that Chloe did back in the Smallville TV series, I know that was referenced in Supergirl, and while similar things could have happened within this show's continuity, it definitely didn't happen anywhere near like it did with Smallville, or nothing at all like it did in Smallville. So that's one thing they do kind of confirm here. So there was never a moment where Superman really took up the mantle of the Blur or Superboy, and he never really fought too many metahumans in Smallville, at least not that we know of so far. It seems like what they're confirming here is the reason he left Smallville is because Smallville just didn't help him really explore himself as Superman, whereas leaving Smallville, going to bigger cities, or going exploring the Arctic, where he eventually finds the Fortress of Solitude, that's what causes him to really discover who he truly is and where he came from. We also get Captain Luthor finally introducing himself to Lois Lane, and he basically tells her that he might have a way to get into the coal mines that Morgan Edge has been buying up in Smallville, and he might be able to do some investigating on his own. And of course, Lois Lane's response is that this doesn't exactly sound legal, and he doesn't correct her, but of course Lois will do anything to find dirt on Morgan Edge, so she does give him her card and says that, yeah, if you find anything, definitely let me know and I'll look into it. And what's funny too is because obviously the real reason he's introducing himself to Lois Lane is so he can get information on Superman. He's trying to ask her questions about Superman, but she's really smart about changing the subject. I don't even think it's because she really is suspicious of him, but of course, anyone who asks her questions about Superman and why it was that she was so interested in him, obviously she's not going to, tell them, oh, it's because Superman's my husband, but she does a good job of just saying, hey, I was a reporter in Metropolis. It was just, the top thing to report on. That's all there is to it. It's not like I own Superman. Now that I'm no longer in Metropolis, anyone can write about him. So I actually thought that was kind of a interesting moment between the two of them. Him clearly trying to look for answers about Superman, and her doing a really good job of not necessarily suspecting him, but still like just having that natural instinct of being able to divert the situation. One thing I mentioned early on, I believe when I was talking about episode 1 of the show, is I do love how they explore kind of the life of a firefighter in the show with Kyle Cushing's character, because I think it's really common in media nowadays when you look at kind of shows about doctors or shows about police officers. A lot of times they do explore the depression side of them a lot, talking about how their failures, and then just what it's like on the job when you're constantly seeing people die all around you. But there is one aspect that doesn't get really explored that much, and it's definitely firefighters, which I think they go through just as much trauma as like EMTs, doctors, and police officers, but you don't really see that getting explored much in television shows. So that's one aspect about Smallville that I'm actually really enjoying, is the exploration of Kyle as a fireman, and him kind of being depressed because not only through some of the fires that he's had to stop that are kind of started by meth labs, as they bring up earlier in the show, meth labs that sometimes have kids in them and that he's unable to save, but we also see what happens when he loses a friend on the job. Like one of the other firefighters, Mitch, even though he doesn't die, he does get seriously hurt from the fire that was started early on the episode, and we really do see this taking a toll on him. Like, he barely wants to leave the couch whenever he's off work, and even then, even when he's like out, it's usually out to a bar. It's not like he's ever really doing anything other than getting himself absolutely wasted, trying to drink away his issues. And you could tell this really has a very negative impact on his family. While I don't quite want to say it's not that he's not thinking about his family, it's just that he thinks about definitely trying to forget about his issues first, and then not really having a full grasp on how his drinking is really affecting the people around him. We see a lot more of this with Sarah later on in the episode, when she's going on her date with Jonathan Kent, and with Jordan Kent, and that's when they run into Jonathan Kent, who has been drinking with some of the other guys on the football team, and he makes a total ass of himself, and this very much upsets Sarah, just because it reminds her of her dad in a lot of ways. And it's here we get kind of that same line that I brought up previously, just like the idea of when you're drinking and making a total idiot of yourself, it's one thing, but when you're affecting the people around you, and in this case it's kind of Jonathan not realizing he's being an asshole to Jordan Kent while he's trying to have a moment with Sarah. Like, not only is he totally being an ass to him, but he's also like, you never know like the impact that you're having with other people around you as well. And that's one thing that Sarah kind of brings up about it to him, and just kind of saying, oh, you're just a city boy, you don't know what it's like to have like personal issues when you grow up in such a perfect family. And the next thing we see is we follow Derek Powell as he's trying to get his powers under control, and he's sent in this device which is powered up by the Kryptonite X, or the X Kryptonite, and we see that Superman actually has no idea what this stuff is, because he looks very confused when he sees the crystal like powering up the machine, and he's about to put a stop to it, but of course Derek flees off, knowing that Superman will chase him, and we get like a really cool chase scene, but it's brought to an end when Lex Luthor also follows them and fires at both of them with a bazooka. And one thing like very strange about this is that this doesn't really get brought up again at the end of the episode. Superman never brings up the fact that he was shot down. Now, my assumption is that Superman was thinking it might have been someone working for Morgan Edge who did it, and he's probably not suspicious that it's the guy who's been trying to kill him this whole time. But either way, it was kind of an interesting moment. So we do see that Captain Luthor, even though he doesn't have his power suit anymore, he does still have a decent arsenal of weapons that may not be able to kill Superman, but can definitely incapacitate him for a little bit. An image I forgot to bring up is that Superman does try to reach out to Derek, but unfortunately Derek at that point seemingly commits suicide by using his heat vision, but keeping his eyelids closed, and assuming his eyelids are indestructible, and you have that burst of energy coming through your eyes. Basically that energy has nowhere else to go except for inside your body, so seemingly that kills him. And it kind of makes me wonder if that's like actually a way way Kryptonians can kill themselves if they're on Earth. If like that's actually something that's been done in the comics, I'm kind of curious to know. Superman does bring up later that he's not sure that he actually killed himself, more of he thinks that it might have been Morgan Edge who had like kind of a kill switch on him. But either way, that would be kind of interesting if that's something that we see later on in the series. We of course get kind of the heartfelt moment between Jonathan Kent and Clark Kent, when Clark kind of mentions him knowing what he's going through. And what was interesting about this is that we see this a lot between Clark Kent and Jordan Kent, but I think this is the first time we really saw it between Clark Kent and Jonathan Kent, because for the most part it feels like Clark Kent has really been relating to Jordan Kent the most, because Jordan Kent is the one who seemingly is inheriting his powers, whereas Jonathan seems to only be naturally skilled. Not his skills don't seem to come from his Kryptonian heritage, at least for now they don't. But we do have like a heartfelt moment where Clark Kent does mention that he totally understands how Jonathan Kent is feeling, and he totally gets why Jonathan Kent doesn't want to stay in Smallville that much longer. And he even agrees, because Superman was really young when he originally left Smallville. Like, if he's only 2 years older than Jonathan Kent, that would mean that Superman was 16 when he basically left Smallville for the rest of his life. So he's telling Jonathan Kent here that at a young age, if you still want to leave Smallville because it's just not the place for you, he'll totally support him. Something I really did not see coming in this episode, but again, a very mature moment coming from especially someone like Superman. We get one more interesting moment where we see that Captain Luthor is upset to see Lois Lane with someone else, and we find out the reason is because in Captain Luthor's reality, the two of them were actually a couple. And it also brings a lot more weight on the previous scene that I brought up about the two of them in the diner, because while I brought up the fact that he tells Lois Lane that he's interested in helping her dig up information on Morgan Edge, one thing I didn't bring up is that they, for a brief moment, they name drop Lex Luthor, and Lois Lane mentions Lex Luthor being the one person on the planet possibly worse than Morgan Edge. And while we don't know if this guy's first name is Lex Luthor, we do know that he is a Luthor from his reality. So if this guy's first name ends up being Lex Luthor, you can only imagine how that must make him feel, like hearing his significant other from another reality say that, oh yeah, Lex Luthor is the worst person in this entire planet. So it would make me really curious to see what his reaction would be to finding out why, or just finding out that this version of Lex Luthor on, this Earth looks completely different from him and is a very, very different character altogether. And it would also make me wonder why that is too, to begin with, because all the characters that we've seen so far, including Lois Lane, Sam Lane, and even Superman himself, have all looked exactly the same as they do on this Earth. So why does this version of Luthor look so much different than the version that we get on this Earth as well? That is something I'm kind of interested to find out more about. Obviously, I don't think my theory about it being a future version of Lex, Alexander Luthor, really pans out, because I doubt they would do both time travel and multiverse explanations or anything like that. So it makes the most sense to kind of say that he is the son of Lionel Luthor, but he's not Lex Luthor per se. Or if he is Lex Luthor, he had a very different mother from the Lex Luthor on Earth Prime. I'm just going to call this version of Earth Prime, because that's what it's called at the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths. So I would be very curious to find out, his whole backstory and why he's very different from the Lex Luthor that we get in Supergirl. But guys, overall, this was a really good episode. But before I wrap things up, I do want to talk about what I've been thinking about these first 5 episodes so far. And sum it up shortly, yes, I've been really loving this series so far. 5 episodes in, it's been doing a great job. I love that, the camera work has been absolutely stunning throughout the series. The special effects at times have been absolutely amazing. And yeah, there are other times where the CG looks extremely cheap, and you can tell that this is definitely a CW show and not an HBO Max show. But there's never a lack of effort for the special effects, even when it doesn't look like its best. It's definitely a lot better than what you would normally see on The Flash or Supergirl, but still not necessarily perfect. I do like that the writing quality has continued from episode 1 all the way up to this episode, and it doesn't look like they're losing that momentum anytime soon. I think the only real complaint I had for a while was the high school aspect of things, because I still feel like a lot of the characters that they run into in their high school still aren't really fully fleshed out yet. But I do think that if we give it some time, we might get a little more backstory on some of the other characters at the school, and hopefully those characters will get fleshed out a little more as the series goes on. But guys, overall it has been an amazing series so far, and this episode was another really great episode. But of course, at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions always want to know what you guys think, so definitely let me know in the comments below if you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, but guys, above all, keep it A+.